My brother-in-law brought my ex-girlfriend as his guest to my wedding, but I let karma take care of everything when his girlfriend showed up and humiliated him in front of everyone. This happened 2 weeks ago, and I still can't believe it. I'm 29, and I recently married my wife, who's 30 and absolutely amazing. She's the love of my life and the first woman I've ever truly trusted after a horrible experience with my ex, but I'll get to that. First, let me clarify something. My wife's brother, who's 34, and I have never gotten along. I don't know what his problem is. But from day one, he made it clear we weren't going to get along. Honestly, I think he's the king of passive-aggressive comments. He's really good at it. He loved to say things like I look surprisingly good for someone who didn't grow up in a well-off family, or that I was really smart, which was good because my looks wouldn't get me anywhere. So yeah, we've never been on good terms. He's always creating drama, whether it's gossiping about me with other family members, or throwing jabs at me every chance he gets. My wife has always defended me, and I've called him out plenty of times telling him to cut it out, but he'd just pout, lay low for a while, and then go back to his usual antics. At some point, his comments stopped bothering me because at the end of the day, he came across as a childish person just spewing nonsense, and no one really paid attention to him. Besides, I was confident in my relationship with my wife, so his words never made me feel insecure about her. Unfortunately, no matter how much I tried to ignore him, things got worse when my wife and I got engaged. I didn't invite my brother-in-law to help plan the wedding in any way, but somehow, he seemed to appoint himself as part of the wedding committee of one himself. No one asked for his opinion, but he always had one. You know the saying about opinions being like rear ends? Everyone has one. And in his case, they were always negative. He criticized my decisions, questioned everything, and threw tantrums when he didn't get his way. He was constantly reminded politely that his opinions didn't matter to me, but he didn't seem to care. He just kept at it. When I chose my best friend as my best man, he flipped out, accusing me of excluding family. It was absolutely ridiculous. Just because he was family, didn't mean I'd ask him to be my best man. Things got so bad that I finally yelled at him at the top of my lungs, even though I'd already yelled at him a few times before to stop meddling because no one was asking for his opinion. My wife fully supported me. But even she couldn't believe how far he was willing to go. I thought that would put an end to the drama with him, but I should have known better. On the wedding day he showed up late, which honestly didn't surprise me. And I was actually glad because I knew he'd bring drama the moment he arrived. I was happy to have some peace before he ruined everything, and I wasn't wrong. I hadn't wanted to invite him, but my in-laws insisted since he's my wife's brother. Besides, after I yelled some hard truths at him, he seemed somewhat tamed. But I should have known people like him don't tame that easily. He decided to bring my high school ex-girlfriend as his plus one. For context, this girl was my first girlfriend, and she was abusive behind closed doors. The relationship ended when I caught her cheating on me. When I confronted her, she publicly humiliated me and made me question my self-worth. It took me years to rebuild my confidence after that relationship. Since then, I've only dated one person, my wife. My wife is everything. My ex wasn't kind, loyal, and supportive. But seeing my ex at my wedding felt like a punch to the gut. I managed to pull my brother-in-law aside during the reception and asked him what he was thinking by bringing my ex to my wedding. He brushed it off and acted like it was no big deal. Then with a smug smile, he said I shouldn't have a problem with her because I should have moved on by now. And if I hadn't, then I shouldn't be marrying his sister. It was clear he brought her just to spite me. My wife wanted to kick them both out right then and there, but I asked her not to. Something told me karma had plans for them, mainly for him. About an hour into the reception, his long-term girlfriend showed up. My wife had invited her as a surprise for him. They'd been in a long-distance relationship for the past 2 years because of her job. My wife thought it would be a sweet gesture to have her there since he hadn't seen her in months. I won't deny being petty by letting his girlfriend see him with my ex. Also, we didn't know their relationship was on the rocks, though it shouldn't have surprised us. When she walked in and saw him with my ex, she lost it. She grabbed the microphone and got everyone's attention. She decided it was the perfect time to expose him for the horrible person he is, right there in front of everyone. She told everyone he'd been cheating on her for months. She said she'd noticed him becoming distant recently and decided to check his social media accounts to see what was going on. That's when she found out he'd been messaging several women, including my ex. She called him a liar and manipulator and said he and my ex deserved each other. My brother-in-law started crying and begged her to talk things out privately, saying he needed to explain himself, but his girlfriend didn't want to hear it. She stormed out furious after literally dropping the mic. I mean, if the mic had broken and they asked me to pay for it, I wouldn't have minded one bit. Come on. It was the best wedding gift I could have asked for. As if that weren't enough, my ex added fuel to the fire by loudly claiming she had no idea my brother-in-law was in a relationship. All our guests started whispering and staring at him, leaving him utterly humiliated. All that was missing was a crowd pointing fingers at him, but that didn't happen. Since my wife and I had had enough and needed to move on with the wedding, we asked the venue staff to escort my brother-in-law and my ex out of the wedding. The rest of the night was a blast. People talked about it and asked if I was okay, but I just told them the wedding had turned out better than I could have imagined. It's clear I didn't plan to humiliate my brother-in-law. But if he had plans to ruin my wedding, he got a taste of his own medicine. Since then, my brother-in-law hasn't stopped calling me, begging me to clear things up to save his reputation or at least give him a chance to do it himself. He claims he didn't know his girlfriend was going to show up and thinks I set him up by inviting her. He insists he didn't mean to ruin my wedding and says I've taken things too far by ignoring him. Well, I've got news for him. I don't regret a thing. He wanted to play with fire and got burned so he can wallow in his crocodile tears. I've told him it's not my fault he cheated on his girlfriend or brought my ex to my wedding. My wife tried to do something nice for him, and he ruined it completely, so it's not my problem. He brought my ex to my wedding purely out of spite. It's not like he didn't know the history, because I've always been open about my past with my ex to anyone who asks. And, I'm sure he's heard the story at least a couple of times. I hope you enjoyed my story of revenge. It's not like other stories I've read here where people meticulously plan a revenge plot. Here, I just saw the opportunity and took it, but I hope you like it. Update 1. Since some of you ask very interesting questions and much has happened since my original post, I felt obligated to provide an update to keep you informed. After all, the drama doesn't stop when you have someone like my brother-in-law in your life. Yes, my wife took action regarding her brother after the wedding. She's fed up with him. She told him he's no longer welcome in our lives unless he takes full responsibility for his actions and gives a sincere apology. Not just to me, but also to everyone he dragged into his mess. To be clear, I don't want or need a sincere apology from him. At this point, I don't care about my brother-in-law. But if my wife needs one and wants to keep him in her life, well, that's up to her. As long as I don't have to deal with him, it's fine. Of course, my brother-in-law wasn't going to take the easy way out. Oh no. He tried to argue that I was being unreasonable and even accused me of stealing his sister. What does that even mean? He also claimed that if I hadn't talked about my ex-girlfriend around him, he never would have known about her. Yep. He said that. Apparently, my story about how abusive she was and how I caught her cheating on me was some sort of sales pitch, and he bought it. Any sane man would run far away from my ex, but he thought it was a great idea to get closer. My wife was shocked by his audacity, I wasn't. She told him she wasn't going to keep feeding into his drama. According to her, their relationship is over until he starts acting like an adult. As for her parents, they stepped in, but not in the way he expected. After hearing everything he did, my wife's parents were furious with him. They told him he had embarrassed the entire family and temporarily cut off the financial support he was receiving. He does have a job, he's not completely useless, but it's not enough to support the lifestyle he enjoys. So that must have been a hard hit for him. Right now, he's couch surfing at friends' places because his parents won't let him move back home, and cutting costs meant his rent was the first thing to go. Needless to say, my brother-in-law is losing his mind. He's been flooding our phones, both mine and my wife's, with texts and voicemails saying we ruined his life, but we blocked him, and that's how it'll stay for a long time. He must not have many friends because he hasn't tried to contact us using other numbers. More wedding details. A lot of people at the wedding, especially on my side, knew who my ex was and how she had treated me. My brother-in-law was already getting side-eye for bringing her. In fact, my best man, my best friend, asked if I wanted him to kick my brother-in-law and his +1 out. I told him no, that would have ruined everything. I know some people think drama can ruin a wedding, but in my opinion, it made mine better. I'm not someone who needs everything to be perfect. Also, if my ex had tried anything with me, like she used to when we were dating, she would have realized there were a few family members who weren't too happy with her. To be fair, she was lucky, or smart, because she stayed quiet, and kept to herself for most of the wedding. Sure, it might have been a great gift to have her thrown out, but like I said, I didn't care about perfection. I also got a lot of questions about how my wife felt about my only other girlfriend being at our wedding. Let me tell you, she was not okay with it. She hated having that piece of trash there, but she was probably one of the people hoping my ex would say something so she'd have an excuse to throw her out the hard way. She's always wanted to give her what she deserves. After the wedding drama, a few days after the wedding, my brother-in-law's girlfriend messaged my wife. She apologized for causing a scene. She felt terrible about how everything played out, but she said she couldn't stay quiet after seeing him with my ex. My wife told her we didn't blame her for anything she did and even regretted that she didn't stick around to enjoy the rest of the party. We were grateful she exposed him for who he really was, and she was relieved we didn't mind that she used our wedding to do it. During that conversation, my brother-in-law's girlfriend dropped even more bombs about him. She said she'd been suspicious for months because he'd been pulling away from her. They'd been in a long-distance relationship for 2 years, and over the last 4 months his behavior completely changed. He stopped answering her calls regularly, got evasive about his plans, and came up with excuses to avoid seeing her whenever she suggested visiting. That's when she decided to investigate. She managed to get into his social media accounts and what she found was insane. Not only had he been messaging my ex, but he'd also been chatting with several other women. It's unclear if he was dating all of them. But he was definitely entertaining them behind her back. She also found out he'd reconnected with my ex over a year ago and had been secretly seeing her since then. I don't think he wanted everyone to know he was seeing her when he brought her to our wedding. He just wanted to make me uncomfortable and ruin my day. But his girlfriend showed up and exposed him for who he really was, a cheat. It gets worse for him. Here's where things get even worse for him. His girlfriend revealed that he had been using money she sent him as well. That explains why his life fell apart so quickly. He lied to her saying he needed financial support to cover bills and other expenses. But he was actually spending it on himself and apparently even using it for dates with other women. As a side note, it's ironic because, at least, he wasn't making the other women pay for everything. Now his girlfriend is taking legal action to recover some of the money he misused. She has more than enough evidence. Like text messages where he asked for money to pay specific bills while his chats with those women told a different story. As for my ex, she's been lurking on social media and even tried to contact me. I blocked her immediately. But just knowing she's out there trying to stir up trouble is unsettling. My brother-in-law's girlfriend also told us that my ex reached out to her. My ex insisted she didn't know my brother-in-law was in a relationship and claimed he was the one who made the first move. She said she felt betrayed by the whole situation. Whether that's true or not, I honestly don't care. She's not my problem anymore, and neither are her feelings. My brother-in-law still thinks we set him up by inviting his girlfriend, which isn't entirely true. My wife invited her as a surprise because she thought they were in a happy and committed relationship. But when I saw that wasn't the case, we did kind of set him up. Technically, we just let things run their natural course. We could have kicked him out, preventing his girlfriend from finding out what happened. But in that case, we would have had to explain to his girlfriend why he wasn't there. Plus, the guests who knew who he had brought might have told her anyway. Lastly, his girlfriend already suspected he was cheating, so I don't think it would have changed much, and I wouldn't call it a trap as such. My wife wanted to do something nice for him because she's the kind of person who likes doing good things in general, but my own brother-in-law ruined everything. He's also been making up all kinds of stories to mutual friends, claiming I planned to ruin his life and exaggerated his actions. However, his family doesn't believe him. They're as fed up with him as I am. My wife's mom told us that recently. My brother-in-law caused trouble at a family gathering by getting into a fight with my wife's younger sister. Apparently, he accused them of turning against him and demanded they convince my wife to forgive him. When that didn't work, he stormed out in anger and hasn't been in contact with them since. This isn't even the first time he's crossed the line with his family. A few months ago, he borrowed money from his parents, claiming it was for car repairs, but they later found out he spent it on a spa day. He also had a falling out with a cousin after spreading rumors about their relationship. It's like he thrives on creating chaos and drama. I'm just glad that all the chaos he's caused has finally come back to bite him and that he's finally getting a taste of his own medicine. Did karma lend a hand? Maybe. But it's not like he made it difficult. Update 2. With how crazy things are, I had to give another update. I'm starting to understand why people love this social network so much. A few days after my last post, my brother-in-law put one of those for sale signs in my front yard. But instead of selling my house, the message said he didn't mean to ruin my wedding and didn't mean to hurt me. It ended by asking me to call him. Thankfully, the sign was facing my house, so I don't think many people in the neighborhood saw it. As soon as I saw it, I took it down. The following week, I discovered he'd taken his tantrum to Facebook, probably because he was angry I didn't call him. He posted a long message accusing me of being a manipulative gold digger who had driven his sister away from her family. He even claimed I was obsessed with my ex and had invited her to the wedding myself. That part in particular made me laugh because everyone who was at the wedding knows how ridiculous that is. Fortunately, most of our friends and family didn't buy his story. People were calling him out in the comments, labeling him a liar. Some even privately messaged me to offer their support, which I appreciated. My wife and I decided not to engage publicly. We thought it was best to let him dig his own grave and not give him the attention he clearly craved. Meanwhile, his ex-girlfriend has been keeping us updated on her legal battle against him. She's suing him for a significant amount of money. Apparently, she had given him access to her bank account because he claimed he was struggling and needed help. She only gave him access so he could use it in genuine emergencies. But after reviewing her bank statements, she found out he had been using the money to fund trips with my ex. And according to my ex, these trips were always suggested by my brother-in-law, who insisted on spoiling her. Now, he's in serious financial trouble. He's been begging her to drop the case, promising to pay the money back when he can, but she told him she doesn't trust him to do so, which makes perfect sense. For now, my wife and I are focusing on ourselves and trying to leave everything behind. We don't want to keep feeding into his nonsense and escalating things further. Well, a few hours in a jail cell might work if he tries something serious, but if he leaves us alone, that's fine too. Either outcome is fine by me, but if he prefers the first option, well, we'll give it to him. As for his ex-girlfriend, we're supporting her in any way we can. She doesn't deserve everything he's put her through, and we hope she gets some closure from her case against him. It's the least he deserves. That's all for now. I'll keep you updated if anything else happens, but honestly, I hope this is the last time we hear from him for a while. Thanks again for all the support. You've all been amazing throughout this nightmare. Update 3. It's been a while, about 7 months since my last update, and things have only escalated. First things first, my brother-in-law's life has turned into a complete mess. It's like everything he did to others has come back to him tenfold. We weren't the only ones he bothered with his antics, but now everyone has turned against him. The last I heard, he'd practically lost everything. Just to recap, my ex-girlfriend dumped him right after the wedding fiasco. She says she did it because she felt deceived by him, but knowing my ex, it was probably money that motivated her. Now, he's completely alone, and as expected, he's still blaming the world for his problems, including my wife and me, but mostly me. As for the lawsuit, it's still ongoing, but things have gotten even worse for him. His ex-girlfriend is moving forward with the case, and it doesn't seem like things are going to improve for him. I mean, he was literally taking her money to spend it on other women. His ex won't stop until she leaves him with nothing. At least, that's what I would do. Besides taking money from her account and using it to spoil another woman, my brother-in-law had also accumulated credit card charges in his ex-girlfriend's name. She's suing him not only for the money he owes, but also for the emotional damage he caused her. I believe it's called alienation of affection. From what I've heard from people who know more about this topic than I do, it's a bit harder to prove. And these kinds of cases don't usually succeed. But if his ex-girlfriend wants to go all the way, then she should. The lawsuit for stealing her money is already serious enough, so it's clear he'll face consequences for his actions. He might even end up filing for bankruptcy, and there's a chance he could face criminal charges. His ex-girlfriend is confident that sooner or later, he'll have to pay, or at least that's what her lawyer told her. The most frustrating part is that he hasn't once acknowledged that he brought all of this on himself. I know he's trying to manipulate the narrative, probably as a way to feel better about the mess he's in, but there are very few people left to blame and even fewer who might believe him. I've received messages from friends and family saying they've heard his stories and don't believe a word of what he says. Many have even encouraged me to respond or say something, but honestly, I don't care anymore. Like I said, he's just a child throwing a tantrum. At this point, everyone knows he's lying and just seeking attention, so there's really no need for me to say anything. He tried convincing his parents to let him move back in, but when they refused, he accused them of abandoning him and choosing my wife over him. In his mind, my wife is the golden child, and that's why they're leaving him behind. I'm no expert, but golden children are usually dysfunctional and my wife isn't. If I had to guess, he's the one being dysfunctional. His parents are completely fed up with him too. They kicked him out when he showed up at their house begging for money and made it clear they wouldn't support him anymore unless he owned up to what he's done and committed to genuinely turning his life around. To be honest, at this point, I don't think it's possible. How do you change someone like my brother-in-law into someone who can actually function in society? I'm sure it's happened for some people, but I don't know if he could be one of them. At this point, I wouldn't even mind if he managed it. I've never truly wished him harm, but when you push the wrong buttons on other people, you can bring out the worst in them. The good thing about all of this is that even though my wife and I haven't been married long, dealing with my brother-in-law has felt like experiencing 10 years of marriage in a short time. What a trial to see if a marriage will work. If we've survived Hurricane Brother-in-Law, I think we can survive anything. I can't thank you enough for all your comments and support throughout all these updates. I don't know if this will be the last one. There might be one more when his ex-girlfriend's lawsuit concludes, but I've been reflecting on everything and wanted to take the chance to say it now. Update 4. It's time for an update on my brother-in-law's ex-girlfriend's lawsuit. I don't want to waste time on the result because I imagine you already know, but his ex-girlfriend won. Still, that victory comes with a couple of asterisks. First of all, she wasn't able to win the alienation of affection lawsuit. But that was clear from the beginning. I guess his ex continued with it just to wear him down. As for the money lawsuit, she did win that one. But the asterisk comes from the fact that she hasn't recovered all the money, and I'm not sure if she ever will. Some of the money he took from her accounts or credit cards was indeed used for necessary expenses. So technically, my brother-in-law had permission for that. What he does have to pay back is the money used for his extra expenses, as we'll call them. These weren't exorbitant expenses since they weren't luxury dates or trips, but a weekend getaway here and another weekend getaway there, and the total amount becomes significant. At first, his ex didn't want to tell us how much it was, but she eventually told my wife, and we're talking about more than $15,000, to pay everything. This makes it harder for his ex to recover her money. However, bankruptcy isn't as good as it sounds. It's true that his creditors can't collect the money now, but at the same time, he was forced to sell his car, which was the only asset he had. On the one hand, he's come out ahead, but on the other, my brother-in-law is left with nothing. If it weren't for a friend letting him sleep at her house, he wouldn't have anywhere to stay. He has nothing to his name and won't for a long time. Even his parents don't want to see him right now. His ex-girlfriend still has the option of trying to get the bankruptcy overturned to collect her money. But even if she does, there's nothing left to take from him because he has nothing. I've learned so much about these topics lately. Sometimes I say I could pursue a career in finance, but it's so boring that I wouldn't. Plus, I only know a small part of it all. To wrap this up, unless his ex-girlfriend decides to go after something else, and we're still in touch with her in case anything happens, because with my brother-in-law, it's clear nothing will. I might make another update. If not, I think this will be our goodbye.